I can do all these hacks through GTM. I can write all these DOM variables. I can write all these listeners and all these scrapers. And each time a new release comes up, I'll just spend another 8 hours to fix all my variables. Or you can look at what part of the organization is causing this friction, try to drill into that and fix that, and suddenly you'll have a healthy data layer with great unit and functional tests, and you don't have to worry about it.
Hey there, Measure Geeks, Julian here, back with another video. We've all heard this question before. Can Google Tag Manager replace the IT or the developers? This is obviously wishful thinking by some marketers out there. Sooner or later, we all need to get our GTM snippet installed, and then we probably need to talk to a developer, and especially when we do more complicated things with GTM, with the data layer and so on. But where does this mistrust and this tension maybe come from when we talk about the relation between developers and marketers, especially when it comes to tracking deployment and Google Tag Manager? This is just one question in a small panel discussion that I had with Simo Ahava and Mercer for Measure Summit, and we'll hear about this in a bit. But if you want to check out the whole session, then you should definitely head over to measuresummit.com and get your ticket right now. All right, we still got lots to cover, so let's dive into the conversation with Mercer, myself, and Simo Ahava at Measure Summit 2020. I would say that GTM came, or the adoption was driven by marketers who said, hey, we need this on the website. Agencies then used it and to install tags. But on the other side, we have developers, right? So inside of a company, there are I would say that Google Tag Manager made it better to communicate what goes onto the website, but there's always this tension between developers and marketers. So maybe, I don't know, Mercer, maybe you can speak to this too, where, how did you perceive it when you had to install GTM and you got pushback from the IT department maybe?
Yeah, I mean, we still run into that. There's still some clients that with where their IT departments, because they see it as, and I think rightly so because of how it started, which was they see it as you're punching a hole in I got this big giant back door now in my site that you can mess with, and it's kind of uncontrolled. But just now the story has to get out there about templates because they didn't realize, especially because they didn't really look at it. They were just kind of like, no, because marketing wants it, and they didn't really understand Tag Manager. I have gotten developers on the calls where I'm like, okay, let's walk through this, and here's what you can do. And then when we explained it, we worked with a cable company as an example. It's like a regional cable company, and the developers were doing sprints and they didn't have Tag Manager, and so we were working with them as a big Ajax site. It was a total pain for measurement. But when I worked with a developer and I walked him through the data layer, and I started talking about, like, listen, you can put stuff here, you put stuff here. Then all of a sudden, and this is where I think it was key. It required communication, to Simo's point. It required somebody who's, like, this is how I describe myself. I speak developer, but I'm not fluent, right, in developer, so I can communicate a little bit. But I can work with them with the data layer, and I'm learning, the how to describe the JavaScript array and everything else. And as the developer understood the potential, they started coming back to me saying, well, do you think marketing would it be useful if marketing knew that they selected a certain package to this point? I think marketing would love that, right? And all of a sudden, bam, now you got the two working together, and marketing seeing things in the data layer that's coming up in every sprint. There's a new thing in there that they can measure or build an audience off of, or create a report from. And the two sides are working together. But it did require that communication so that developers understood this wasn't just busy work that you were doing. And what it really did is it took off a burden from other things that they were being asked to do, because they could just put all these signals in the data layer. The data layer drove all of the results, which is where the beauty of the data layer is, right? The data layer is your signals. And then if anything changes on the site, doesn't matter. Like, do whatever you want to do on the site. Just make sure the data layer is telling the story. And as long as that happens, marketing, nothing's going to break and no one's going to flip out. And once everybody sort of understood the power of how that all came together, it was just golden.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful way to put it. When you think about the gradient of how to use GTM, is that at the one end of the line you have the complete independence from the development machine. Like you can write your event listeners through GTM, you can scrape stuff off the HTML, you can build your own variables with their values, and kind of do a lot of guesswork based on what the site should look like. Obviously, we all know who've been doing that stuff. We know how fragile that is. Like, even if a single HTML element changes on the page, it can throw your entire implementation off. And then you have to think about what to do things like Google Translate, which automatically translate text on the DOM. So suddenly your HTML variables might not work anymore because they're looking for the wrong type of text content. Or maybe there's a new currency introduced and suddenly the symbol is in a weird place. So there's this one at the one end, and then at the other end is this like 100% data layer fueled implementation, where everything, all this, these signals that Mercer mentioned, all this semantic information is added to the data layer. It's also an event-driven data layer, so all the user interactions are reflected in custom code that then pushes stuff into data layer. And that the truth is somewhere in between. You need both. You need some solid DOM scraping with maybe data attributes or something, but you still need a really good data layer setup. The great thing about the more you do with data layer is that when you have a good development environment, when you have able developers working on it, and a good, like kind of an agile setup, you can actually add that data layer to be a part of the build process. So the site will not build if the data layer doesn't pass the tests. So that way you can basically ensure that if a new release of the site is designed and some API is changed so that instead of producing the enhanced e-commerce stuff into data layer, it just produces an empty object. So a clear bug from GTM's point of view. That site won't build until that unit test passes. So now the developers have to go back and look what broke the data layer. And this is unprecedented. You don't get that with GTM. There's no controls in GTM that say that, hey, something broke, do something. I mean, you can build these monitoring things that actively monitor GTM, but you need to build them yourself. So now by having that part of the build pipeline, this is just one example of developer cooperation. Having that in the build pipeline itself, you're making sure that none of your business critical information ever gets lost. And that's, this is, I know that for many, it's a painful idea having to talk to developers, but this is also because of stereotypes and kind of a very popular way to approach an organization. And this is one of those myths that I've been like busting my ass off to break, because an organization is exactly what you make it to be. If it's like completely inflamed, if those relationships are broken, I don't think GTM will fix that. You know, GTM is a great tool, but it won't fix that broken organization. So at that point, you have to start figuring out, I can do all these hacks through GTM. I can write all these DOM variables. I can write all these listeners and all these scrapers. And each time a new release comes up, I'll just spend another 8 hours to fix all my variables. Or you can look at what part of the organization is causing this friction, try to drill into that and fix that, and suddenly you'll have a healthy data layer with great unit and functional tests, and you don't have to worry about a thing. So it's really about the more I always, and this always happens when I talk about GTM. I start talking about GTM and I end up talking about the organization, because that's how I see them. They're completely, it's symbiotic. You can't take one away from the other if you want a really healthy implementation. And now I went so far away from what the original question was that I don't know if we're even close anymore, but that's what happens when we talk about GTM.
This is great. This is great. We talk about communication, and for me, definitely when I look at GTM, it taught me a new language to speak. I mean, even that concept with versions and publishing your version and workspaces, that is something that came out of the development practices, the best practices. And now we have them in the tag management and the marketing deployment, so to say, as well. And when you go to a developer, he needs to normally ask you these questions. When do you want to fire this? Which pages, under which circumstances, which data should be sent over? And this is all kind of baked in. So it's kind of genius. When I first started using it, that I was not aware of all of these best practices, but now I totally understand why people do this in the development space.
Yeah, I think that like the problem is that GTM doesn't enforce this. Like you can use GTM however you want. And when you look at the majority of the blogs out there, and yes, also many articles on my blog as well, they tell you how to do stuff through GTM, how to fix things, how to hack things, how to add a cookie banner through GTM, or how to add a pop-up or something, or how to, you know, add some form fields that send some hidden data to your CRM, whatever. You're making changes to the page. At that point, this brings me in another tangent, but at that point, you have to remember a very important thing that I think many people will gloss over, is that so many of the world's websites, of the world's browsers block GTM. They're using Firefox private windows, they're using Ghostery, they're using uBlock Origin or some tool that blocks GTM. When you block GTM and you've spent all those hours writing all that application logic into GTM, you're basically creating a discriminating users who want to block GTM from having the perfect website experience. So this is another thing where people who are kind of frustrated with the development process, instead of getting their kind of maybe their A/B tests or something running properly through a combination of work with like HTML attributes and then the tool itself, they do everything through GTM or through the A/B testing tool. And this is in today's world, this is very, very dangerous if you want to offer a unified experience to all your site visitors. But it all boils down to how you approach that organization. And my suggestion to anybody who kind of relates to being in a situation where they just can't get anything through with the IT is to just make that the focus of your efforts for the next quarter or something. Like try to figure out, start with having like daily stand-ups, create a 15-minute time every day where people from development teams, UX designers, analysts, data scientists, business owners, anybody with a stake in the website or the app, 15 minutes every day, discuss where you're going right now and use that 15 minutes to kind of air things out. And then the next step would be to add the next step in the agile process itself. But try to break down those communication barriers, because they are really the key to solving GTM, not figuring out how to write JavaScript in a custom HTML tag. That's inconsequential to creating a really good setup.
You just gave me permission to not learn more JavaScript. You know that.
I did, and I'm going to take everything I said just now back and come back to you. People really need to learn JavaScript.
All right, so there you have it. Pretty interesting thoughts, don't you think? I'd love to hear from you. What tensions have you experienced maybe when you did tracking deployments with Google Tag Manager between developers and marketers? How do you see it? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to catch the whole session, as well as many other sessions from top speakers in the industry, then get your free ticket at measuresummit.com today. All right, as always, my name is Julian. Till next time.